In the winter of 1777-78, the Continental Army under General George Washington struggles to survive in its winter quarters at Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. Even though the winter remains relatively mild, 2,500 men, a fourth of his troops, die of hunger, disease, and cold. Washington himself lives in a tent until his men are sheltered in log huts. Only then does he move into a house. Just 20 miles away in Philadelphia, the British are safe, well-fed, and warm. Their ample gold buys all they need. After 2.5 years of war, the success of the American Revolution remains in doubt. While the Continental Army suffered at Valley Forge, American envoys were in Paris seeking European professional officers. One was from France, the Marquis de Lafayette, here riding with General Washington at Valley Forge. His name and others were to become an honor roll in America's struggle for freedom. From Germany, Frederick von Steuben, Thaddeus Kosciuszko and Casimir Pulaski from Poland, Johann Kalb, a Bavarian living in France. Von Steuben arrived at Valley Forge early in 1778, and Washington promptly named him drill master for the ill-trained troops. To his interpreters, von Steuben once gave a memorable order: "Come and swear for me in English. These fellows won't do what I bid them." In early spring, Washington almost lost hope, but by April 30th, his cautious optimism returned. Prodded by Benjamin Franklin, France openly sided with the Americans, "raising us up by a powerful friend among the princes of the earth," said Washington. Now another great European power had become involved in the American war. Everywhere but America, most fighting took place at sea. For the first time in the war, the British Isles were menaced, as a fleet grappled with the French off Ushant, an island at the west entrance to the English Channel. Even in America, Britain's power depended upon the sea, for ships carried the necessary replacements for supplies and men. Hence, the vital need to control sea lanes and ports, such as Philadelphia, shown here after the war. For example, a shortage of ships, together with the possibility of a French attack at sea, forced Sir Henry Clinton to move by land when he left Philadelphia for New York. Thus Washington, his army drilled into better shape, was able to chase Clinton through New Jersey and finally catch him on June 28th near Monmouth Courthouse. While the battle blazed in sweltering summer heat, the wife of an artilleryman caught up a rammer and worked at the cannon when her husband fell. Carrying water to the wounded and the hard-pressed troops, she earned a lasting nickname, Molly Pitcher. Monmouth was the last large battle in the North. Neither side won decisively, and the British slipped into New York. Out in the Illinois country, George Rogers Clark and his frontiersmen snapped at small British forces and their Indian allies. By taking outposts such as this one at Vincennes, Clark won territory more than half the size of the 13 rebellious colonies. Throughout the war, the colonies possessed only a small fleet. This Scottish-born captain, John Paul Jones, commanded a series of vessels that hounded British shipping. On September 23rd, 1779, his flagship, the Bonhomme Richard, dueled with the British Serapis. After Jones rammed the Serapis, her captain asked that the Americans had surrendered. "I have not yet begun to fight," shouted John Paul Jones through a speaking trumpet. At last, the British captain struck his colors and handed over his sword and surrendered his ship. Pistols at his belt, Jones accepted the British surrender within view of the slowly sinking Bonhomme Richard. Meanwhile, General Benedict Arnold, an American hero at Saratoga in 1777, turned traitor. Feeling slighted and wanting money, he gave the British details of the key position at West Point, commanding the Hudson River. His contact, Major John Andre, was stopped by New York militiamen who intended to rob him. Instead of money, they found incriminating documents in his boot. A report of Andre's capture reached Arnold, in time for him to escape to British forces, but Andre was sentenced to death. On the day before he was hanged as a spy, Andre sketched this self-portrait. In the South, the British had launched a campaign in 1778 to capture ports. Savannah, Georgia fell that December. Here at Charleston, South Carolina, Patriots held out until May 1780. Next, the British, aided by Tories, Americans loyal to the Crown, added Camden, South Carolina to their string of victories. But at Kings Mountain, South Carolina, in October 1780, an American force of frontiersmen won a savage battle. Major Patrick Ferguson, leader of about 1,000 Tories, was shot from his horse. Shocked by the sudden Patriot victory, Lord Cornwallis, in charge of British operations in the South, retreated into South Carolina. The American general Nathaniel Greene sent Daniel Morgan west to harass British outposts. Here at Cowpen, South Carolina, Morgan's forces won an overwhelming victory over cavalryman Bannister Tarleton, nicknamed Bloody Tarleton in an earlier engagement when he cornered Virginia troops and slaughtered them. After the victory at Cowpens, Greene made a masterful retreat into North Carolina, luring Cornwallis into following him. At the Battle of Guilford Courthouse, Cornwallis claimed a victory but lost a fourth of his army. Not all fighting involved large armies. In the South, Patriot guerrilla fighters such as Francis Marion survived on short rations, harassing and destroying isolated British troops left behind as the main force moved northward. In small, tough bands, the Patriots floated across rivers and struck swiftly with deadly effect. In the spring of 1781, Cornwallis decided to subdue Virginia. Maneuvering against Lafayette, he was hemmed in at Yorktown, where he hoped to receive provisions and reinforcements by sea. Instead, a French fleet under Admiral de Grasse blockaded the Virginia Capes, cutting off supplies and reinforcements from Cornwallis. Clinton held New York with a large force, but fear of an attack pinned him there. Washington and Count de Rochambeau, the French commander, left New York for Yorktown and planned a careful siege. "Our operations are fast drawing to a point of commencement," Washington wrote. "I hope to open trenches upon the enemy's works." There were spirited clashes. Surrounded on land and blockaded at sea, Cornwallis made a desperate attempt to break out, but a severe storm forced him to turn back. In the end, the outnumbered British sent out a white flag on October 17, 1781, and surrendered a few days later. Although the last major American battle of the Revolution had ended, Britain and France remained at war for nearly 2 more years. Their fleets continued to fight battles such as this one off Guadeloupe in the West Indies. In Europe, Franklin and others began negotiating a treaty of peace to guarantee American independence. Their efforts led to the formal Treaty of Paris, signed on September 3, 1783. The former colonies, finally recognized by Britain as a nation, celebrated joyously. Washington paraded into New York City after the British pulled out. After bidding his officers farewell, he rode south. He arrived at his beloved plantation, Mount Vernon, in time for Christmas. What sort of new nation did the successful revolution produce? In 1783, a troubled one. 2 years earlier, the former 13 colonies, outlined here in red, had joined together as states under the Articles of Confederation. The central government controlled large areas to the west, formerly claimed by individual colonies. However, the loose alliance worked more like an agreement among sovereign equals than the basis for a united nation. Tiny Rhode Island wielded the same authority as powerful Virginia, for every state under the Articles could cast one vote. Moreover, on important foreign and domestic policies, 9 of the 13 states had to agree. Washington understood these defects, which threatened the new nation. Let prejudices, unreasonable jealousies, and local interests yield to reason and liberality, he urged. Let us look to our national character. We are fast verging to anarchy and confusion. One major post-war crisis concerned money. The new nation literally had none, either to make trade within America easier or to finance its own operation. The British had drained away the hard cash. In those days, gold and silver. The bales of paper currency printed earlier to raise money for the war had lost all value. Lack of money oppressed debtors and led to dissatisfaction and disturbances. During Shays' Rebellion in Massachusetts, farmers were angered by high taxes they could not pay with paper money. They fought with public officials and nearly toppled the state government. Referring to the discontent, Washington observed, "There are combustibles in every state which a spark might set fire to." In this atmosphere, a convention met at Philadelphia in May 1787 to revise the Articles of Confederation. The new nation was indeed fortunate. To Philadelphia came men such as Alexander Hamilton, a New Yorker with a brilliant war record, James Madison, a Virginian who said they were now to decide the fate of Republican government, and sage Benjamin Franklin, who at 81 was the oldest delegate there. George Washington was elected president of the convention. The issues soon revealed divisions between large states and small. In June, the convention voted to construct a new form of government, not merely to amend the Articles. America had sent its best thinkers to the convention, and debate raged for weeks. The great compromise they arrived at provided the basis for the system we have today. Equal representation for each state in the Senate, and representation based on population in the House of Representatives. The writing of the Constitution was completed, and the document signed in September 1787. As the delegates left for home, there remained the problem of persuading states to ratify it. Hamilton, Madison, and John Jay wrote a brilliant series of articles, later published in a book called The Federalist, about the new Constitution. Their persuasive explanations, together with the support voiced by George Washington and Benjamin Franklin, and the prospect of adding a Bill of Rights, swung states into line. In 1788, the Constitution was ratified and became the supreme law of the land. On April 30th, 1789, George Washington was inaugurated in New York City as the first president of the United States of America. The nation, freed from Britain at such terrible cost in lives and suffering, at last had established a government under which it could survive. Indeed, which was to help it prosper.